Hi, it's Larry Fuller with the Babcock Church Christ and welcoming you to another edition of Bible Answers Fast. Today, whether you are religious or not, you would want to continue to learn about what the Bible says about the climate. Now, climate change is a hot topic globally right now. And the answer God gives in the Bible might surprise you. So stick around and watch it in completion. Over the last 60 years, a lot of scientists, a lot of political figures have issued doomsday warnings, different doomsday messages, saying the climate's going to change or whatever the fact may be that drives that opinion, and things will become extinct in a number of years. Has it historically been proven true or untrue? That's the question we want to look at today. Has it been accurate according to history over the last 60 years, or has it not? When there's a issue that scientists or scientific review comes up with that threatens the population, the panic button is pressed. And you can see once the panic button is pressed, we know this picture of the man and the shock on his face is concerning the Wall Street Economic Forum. But nonetheless, it's a good indicator of how people think, how people react, and it's global. And then the propaganda war spouts out much on media, television, and the news and stuff. Anything that may be misinformation, even. They report it anyway as being accurate, these predictions, and are they accurate or not? But nonetheless, the panic button is pressed, people react vividly, shockingly, and full of awe, and they buy into it, and the propaganda is spread worldwide. That's a natural order we see in the world. You've heard of a pandemic, something that is medically wrong across the whole world is called a pandemic. This is an infodemic, and global conversations on science and misinformation occur on a global pathway. It's an infodemic. And as a result, we have this 13-year-old girl with an angry rant concerning climate change, and she would retweet that the climate change will end human life on the earth in 2023 to 2025, back 7-10 years ago. What makes a 13-year-old girl with an angry rant the poster child for climate change? Does she represent science? But yet she is held up as knowing all things, and she is the poster child for global warming or climate change and the extinction of the human race as we know it by 2023 or 2025. Now, that was back in 2015 to 2018. In 5 years, she tweeted back then that climate change would wipe out all humanity by 2023. Guess what? We're nearing the end of 2023, and climate change hasn't wiped out anybody, and forcing her to delete that tweet of 5 years ago. That's just an indication of the widespread propaganda and maybe misinformation that people buy into, and maybe they should not. Here's an indication of people buying into things that they need not. Here is the same Sky Tracker weather, the same channel, the same anchorman, about 4 years apart. About 4 years ago, we see the top, and in 2022, about the same time of the month, we see the bottom given out to the people, information. Notice two things. In the top one, about 4 years ago, it's noticeably warmer. Edmonton, 25 to 21 degrees at the bottom. Calgary, cooler at the bottom. Saskatoon, Regina, cooler at the bottom. Winnipeg, cooler at the bottom. And it's notably hotter temperatures at the top about 4 years ago. But also notice the color schemes given, the difference in 4 years. At the top, does it not reflect green and yellow as being cool and moderate? However, in 2022, even though it's cooler outside, the temperatures are cooler, we see a dramatic reddish orange color. That would denote to the viewer the harshness of a higher temperature that is plaguing the nation. That color scheme alone is an indication that people have bought in to their perception of climate change. With a grain of salt, I can't validate this graph. It's from the Daily Mail website in the UK. And notice that on the right-hand side is predictions of what the temperature is going to be. And the black line is the actual temperature. Notice from 1960 to 2018, it has only gone up half a degree Celsius. That's 40 years, or almost 60 years, with half a degree more. Now the weather spikes hotter or colder. We have no say in what the temperature might be, but look at the graph. In 60 years, in 50 to 60 years, the temperature only got up half a degree in Celsius. And what's on the right is sheer speculation, sheer predictions of a much higher temperature. And this graph, the headline states that this graph reveals how 95% certain estimates of the Earth heating up were a spectacular miscalculation. Now, I can't verify the accuracy of this graph, but history would indicate the veracity of truth is behind this graph as well. And therefore, I present it to you today as such. Going back 60 years in different climate changes, raising the panic button to a global level, in the late 60s, the scientists would indicate that it's growing so cold, they predict there will be an ice age, a new ice age, and it will wipe out humanity in about 10 to 15 years. Did that ever materialize? Those scientific facts were not facts at all, but speculation or predictions that did not come true. There was no talk of an ice age today, but 60 years ago, the panic was there will be an ice age per the scientific reports. Totally false. And we move on. In the 70s or 80s, there was the acid rain climate change. And they said because of acid rain, the lakes would have all manner of dead fish. And within 10 to 15 years, that would happen, and all the crops that we grow are at stake of being wiped out. And therefore, I am certain without crops, how could humanity exist, really? So that was a very heavy thing in the 70s and 80s, this acid rain. That was very much the scare back then. And people took a doomsday approach with it. But those predictions did not materialize. What happened to them? They fell by the wayside. In the 90s, late 80s, there was the ozone layer scare. And scientists reported that there was a hole in the ozone, and therefore the sun's ray, it was getting bigger and wider, and the sun's rays would penetrate through that hole, increase the temperature, and eventually bring about extinction of mankind. Now, did these predictions become true and accurate? No. Why don't we hear anything about the ozone layer in 2023? It has fallen by the wayside. Even though that panic button to a global sense was issued and people bought into it, and they were very scared at the time. But that prediction too fell by the wayside. In the 2000s, there was global warming. They would predict, the scientists and scientific reports would predict that the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic was going to melt, and it would wipe out all the polar bears, and the sea levels would rise accordingly. That did not happen. There might have been a little melting of ice, but much is there today, and it hasn't come about as they predicted. Well, today we have full-blown climate change perils. And again, the panic button has been issued, and propaganda all over the world of misinformation has scared people to death that the world will become extinct because of excess carbon. And whether you're a conspiracy theorist thinking that politicians or rich public figures are behind it to make an increase in their pocketbook, or whether you are sincere in believing such, we know that the politicians and these figures, they hop on their private jets and go all across the world. They don't practice what they preach. They get into limos, big chauffeur-driven limos, and drive here and there and everywhere. It's like carbon hypocrisy, yet they will place in this country a heavier and heavier and heavier tax called a carbon tax upon people to drive their cars and heat their homes. Even to the point where some countries are killing off or want to kill off 30,000 cows in case to shed their flatulence in case it adds to the climate change. This carbon tax does not change one iota of climate change. And whether you are sincerely believing it or not, the alarm button has been pressed. Propaganda, war of probably misinformation has been triggered to a global level, and thereby we have a 13-year-old child become the poster child for climate change, and 5 years later has to delete a tweet she made 5 years earlier about human life becoming extinct in 2023. So, what does God say in the Bible about the climate? In Genesis 8:22, he says, "While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease." So we need to chill out, pardon the pun. We need to chill out because God's in control. And while the earth remains, it'll continue as is. There may be fluctuations in the weather. It may be colder or hotter. We have winter. We have 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit weather here in Canada in the winter. And in the summer, maybe 30 above. That's not different from 20 years ago. And God says in the Bible, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night shall not cease. So we need to chill out on a global level and have faith in what God says in the Bible. God has this to say. Notice that the earth will come to an end eventually, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But we need to talk about the fact that there are religious doomsdayers that falsely claim religiously that the end of the world is predictably near by signs, evident signs. That is just false. There is no message in the Bible that would talk about the end being near predictably by signs. So we know when they make that claim, by the signs they see, that's a false claim. 4 truths about the second coming of Christ. First of all, the first truth, it will happen. The end of the earth will happen. But like I said from Genesis, while it remains, winter and summer, heat, cold, will not cease. However, the time will come for the second coming of Christ. It will happen. Hebrews 9:27, it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment. Hebrews 9:28, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly await for him, he will appear a second time apart from sin for salvation. So it's going to happen, but can we predict when it will happen? No. There are absolutely no signs to predict when it will come, when it will happen. Look at what Jesus says in Matthew 24:36. But of that day and hour, the second coming of Christ, the end of the earth, of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So if someone predicts by signs, you know that's false. There are no signs to predict. No one knows but God in heaven only. Furthermore, verse 37, Jesus continues, but as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they're eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So will also be the coming of the Son of Man. He will come as a thief in the night. A thief will not say, well, at 8 o'clock Wednesday night, I'm coming to your house to steal things. Make sure you're there and have the OPP with you, and you can arrest me. No, the thief will not say that, of course. The thief will stake it out and enter your home when you're gone to work and you're not there, and you won't know anything about it. He doesn't want to get caught. Well, the Son of Man will come like a thief in the night, at an hour you least expect it. There will be no signs to predict his coming. In fact, only the Father in heaven knows that time. The third core truth is it will trigger the end of the earth and the universe. Peter tells us in 2 Peter 3:6, by which the world that then existed perished, being flooded by water. He talks about Noah's day. But the heavens and the earth, which are now preserved by the same word, are reserved for fire until the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? So the end of the earth will come, the end of the universe will come at the second coming of Christ, which will come like a thief in the night. Only the Father knows that time. It cannot be predicted. Not only audible, but visible as well. Revelation 1:7. John would tell us that, behold, he's coming with the clouds, that's Christ, and every eye will see him, even they who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn because of him. Even so, amen. Why will they mourn? Because most are on the broad way which leads to destruction. At the second coming of Christ, their knee will bow, and their tongue shall confess him, but it will be too late. And Romans 14:12, so then each of us shall give account of himself to God. Does God have to rely on global warming? Think of it as, if that graph is accurate, 0.5 degrees Celsius increase in 60 years. Does God have to rely on global warming to that extent for the final destruction of the earth? Let's think about that for a sec. Way back in the beginning, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. God spoke it, and it was done. It came into existence. Cannot God speak it out of existence as well? Sure he can. He doesn't have to rely on any part of global warming or carbon increase to bring about the final destruction of the earth. How do I become that godly person that Peter warned us to be, in hindsight that the world is coming to an end someday? Well, Jesus said in Mark 16:15, he charged this gospel to be preached to everyone. That's no exception. That includes me and you. What is that gospel? Mark 16:16. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. What is Bible baptism? Excuse me. Bible baptism is when a believing and penitent heart is immersed under water for the remission of sin. You have to believe first, which requires you to be of accountable age, not a baby who can't believe in Christ. And then you have to repent, and then you can be baptized and receive the remission of your sin. That's Bible baptism. 1 Peter 3:21. Speaking about Noah and water in verse 20, in regard to that, there is an antitype or like figure, meaning water, which now saves us. Notice it saves us. Baptism, not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but an answer of a good conscience toward God. There's that penitent heart through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Well, is it the need for everyone? What about the Apostle Paul? Was he saved somehow differently? No. He too had to obey the gospel. And when Ananias came to him, in Acts 22:16, he said to him, to Paul, "And now, why are you waiting? Arise and be baptized, and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord." Notice he was still in his sins, even though he believed in Christ now. He accepted him into his heart, but Christ told him, "You'll be told what you must do." And what was told to Paul was exactly what Jesus said in Mark 16:16. Having believed, you need to be baptized, washing away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. Bible truth makes other forms of baptism, like sprinkling or pouring or baby baptism, to be false. So, have you obeyed the gospel accordingly? You may have lots of questions, and they are certainly welcomed. You may think I have represented the truth. I'd like to hear from you on that. Sincerely. You can also check out our website at www.bancroftchurchchrist.com. But for now, I thank you for your wonderful attention to this Bible truth lesson and deriving the answer for yourself about the climate.